I'm not going to talk too much about Antonin Dvořák's Serenade in D minor. His music, of course, is so delightfully forthright and sincere that it more than speaks for itself, except to say that one of the little things that we talked about in rehearsal was that more than any other great composer I can think of, Dvořák had that strange ability to write music that was jolly and happy and lighthearted, even though it was in a minor key. And so keep that in mind as you listen to this piece, particularly the first movement, which is a march in D minor, but manages to sound happy in spite of the tonality. We're going to be presenting two works by Johann Sebastian Bach on this concert. One of them is a cantata, a work that was utterly unknown to me before my wife Camila brought it to my attention. And I was so grateful to get to know this incredibly beautiful piece that I asked her if she would like to sing it with us, and she's going to. Interesting that it was originally written for alto and a small string orchestra. In order to make it singable by my wife, who's a soprano, I've done something totally in the tradition of Bach and raised it up several steps. So it's the same piece, but it is now in a register more comfortable for the soprano voice. Bach would probably have fit in very, very well with the environmentally conscious citizens of Seattle. He was forever recycling his music. I'm thinking, for example, of the fact that in several of his cantatas, when he needed an opening movement, he would, shall we say, ransack a piece that he'd already written and sort of tack it on to the beginning of a cantata so that everybody would think that they were getting a brand new sinfonia. The first movement of the first Brandenburg Concerto became the opening movement of the 52nd cantata. The opening movement of the third Brandenburg Concerto became the opening movement of, I think, Cantata 174. The opening of his E major violin partita, which we all know, etc. He fleshed it out, harmonized it, orchestrated it, and that became the opening section of the Cantata number 29. Similarly, he was frequently tampering with concertos that he'd already written. It has been conjectured that, being a keyboard player primarily, if he wrote a really good concerto, he couldn't stand to just have it playable by, say, a violin or an oboe, so he would frequently come up with keyboard versions of concertos that he had written for other instruments. Such is the case with the F major keyboard concerto, which we're going to present on this concert. I'm going to double in the roles of soloist and conductor. The piece is, in fact, the fourth Brandenburg Concerto, except that in this case, what was originally concerto for one violin, two flutes, and orchestra, Bach has taken the violin part and recast it as a solo keyboard part. He kept the two flutes, so it is now solo keyboard, two flutes, and a string ensemble. Occasionally, particularly in the second movement, he took all of the solo glories from the violin and flute parts and gave them all to the piano. So I get to do a fair amount of appropriation in this piece. My flutists have, I think, long since forgiven me, and I hope that the success of Bach's own transcription of his music is justification enough for doing it that way. The second half of our concert is entirely devoted to the works of Hector Berlioz, two very, very famous works of his, the Roman Carnival Overture and the Rocoxy March from the Damnation of Faust, and a somewhat less known work, excerpts from his Romeo and Juliet dramatic symphony. Berlioz was quite taken with the works of Shakespeare and actually musically set him in a number of compositions, in none of them more successfully, I think, than in Romeo and Juliet. There's a long-standing tradition amongst composers where they will pay homage to one of their forebears in music. Bear with me here, because I'll get back to Berlioz in a second. For example, the last movement of Mozart's 40th Symphony begins, and as an act of homage to Mozart, when Beethoven wrote his Fifth Symphony, he took those same notes put them in the lower regions of the orchestra, put them in a waltz rhythm, and out came. So that was his little homage to Mozart. When Schumann wrote a very heroic theme in the finale of his Rhenish Symphony, he was paying homage to Schubert, one of his favorite composers, and the Hosanna movement from the Mass in G major, Hosanna in excelsis. And this kind of thing has gone on primarily amongst German composers for centuries. Well, this will give you an idea of what preoccupies me when I'm driving. A couple of weeks ago, when I was going through the music for this concert in my head, I was thinking of the very opening of the Berlioz. The opening is supposed to be a musical evocation of the years-long feud between the Montagues and the Capulets, feud so old that nobody can remember what it's about, except that the enmity remains. And it opens with this fugue subject, which is spit out by the violas. So here we have this very potent fugue subject, the first four notes of which are a minor chord spelt this way. And as I thought about it, something suddenly occurred to me. And that was that when Prokofiev wrote his music, evoking the enmity between the Montagues and the Capulets, it's this very pompous etc. And look how it opens. These seesawing minor chords. But the first one is an ascending, and several times in the course of Prokofiev's ballet, something happens as a result, as a tragic result of this enmity, and it always begins with those same four notes. Viz, the death of Tybalt. And later on, when Romeo and Juliet both kill themselves, the very tragic music is again beginning. Was Prokofiev paying homage to the great Berlioz symphony? I suspect he was.